für grüne und nachhaltige Entwicklung. Das ist unterzeichnet des Chancellor, Herr Olaf Scholz, für die Republik Indien.
And we're going to interrupt that story from Uganda because we're getting live visuals now from Berlin of a signing ceremony of some documents and agreements by the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his German host, Chancellor Olaf Scholz. We're expecting that the two men will speak at a press briefing shortly, and we'll bring you that live once it gets underway. Remember that the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is at the beginning of a three-nation tour that started earlier today in Berlin with talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Will take him on to Denmark and then Paris for meetings with the Danish and French leaders, but also with the leaders of other Nordic countries that are going to be attending the India-Nordic summit that's being hosted in Copenhagen later this week. It's been a busy day of diplomacy, as we were hearing earlier from WION Sibal in Berlin, by the Prime Minister and the German Chancellor. Lots on the agenda, including, of course, economic and diplomatic cooperation on a variety of different fronts, a focus placed by the Indian Prime Minister on opportunities for the Indian diaspora in Germany, and that was accentuated by members of the diaspora welcoming Prime Minister Modi to Berlin's Brandenburg Airport earlier in the day, where German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was also on hand. The first time that these two leaders have met face to face. Hanging in the backdrop to these meetings, of course, Russia's war on Ukraine and the anxieties of many leaders across Europe about the direction of that conflict. Let's take you now to the press conference that's underway.
Welcome to you to Berlin. I am delighted that the first intergovernmental consultations of this government take place with the Indian government. For me, that is a sign of the special quality of our relationship. No less pleased am I at the fact that your first trip abroad after a longer period without travel brings you to Germany. And hopefully we will be having you as our guest back soon. I invited you as our guest to the G7 summit end of June to Elmau, and we look forward to welcoming you back to Germany. We are ready to continuing and deepening the close cooperation with India on global issues, and also to expand it, because that is what is important. During our 6th Indo-German intergovernmental consultations, we also focused on global issues, and these consultations help us deepen our relationship. India is a central partner for Germany in Asia, in economic terms, security policy terms, and climate political terms. More than 1,800 German companies have recognized India's potential. They are active in India and have helped create hundreds of thousands of jobs. Our companies are well aware of the locational advantages of India, a big market, a high potential for growth, and an impressionability to innovate. The higher education and science sector, too, is a good indicator for the ever closer integration of both countries. More than 7,000 Indian students are studying at German universities and higher education institutions. They are very welcome, above and beyond studies in Germany. Our consultations, as everyone is aware, are taking place in a dramatic global situation. Through its attack on Ukraine, Russia has violated fundamental principles of international law. The war and the brutal attacks against and on the civilian population in Ukraine show how unrestrained Russia has been in violating the fundamental principles of the UN Charter. Thus, I repeat my appeal to Vladimir Putin: end this war, end this senseless killing, withdraw your troops from Ukraine. The importance of a rule-based order is illustrated to us and impressed upon us by this war. We agree on the fact that borders should not be changed through the use of violence, and that the inviolability of borders and the sovereignty of nations has to be universally accepted. We talked about this in greater detail, the Prime Minister and I. What needs to be done now is to ensure that we achieve a better future together, not by waging wars against each other, but by pursuing economic growth and development together. What is clear is that the Indo-Pacific belongs to the most dynamic global regions, and at the same time it is confronted with a number of conflicts and challenges. Thus, Germany is going to maintain and further intensify, where possible, its varied commitment on the ground. India is amongst the very important partners of ours here. The world can only develop well if we are clear as to the fact that future relations in the world will be characterized and marked by many countries, not by a few powerful countries and nations, but by many important countries. The rise of many countries is what has become important. India numbers amongst those countries that are of greatest importance with regard to this perspective, not only because it is the country with the greatest, biggest population, but also because of the part it plays and the share it has in the global economy, which goes to say that we need to develop this global cooperation in such a way that it is not only characterized and marked by many, but also expresses a multilateral approach. And that is a very important point for us in Germany. This means that we make sure that what links some of us, democracy that is, a constitutional state, the rule of law, is something where we recognize one another. And I'm not referring to countries, but I speak globally here. This makes cooperation so important. Thus, I'm pleased that I have partners like Indonesia and India that on the African continent's countries that pursue the same approach. We have to realize that democracy is an interest of mankind, and this is something that links us and towards which we bear a responsibility. Now, when we look to the importance that India is going to have in the future economically, but also as regards population growth, it is obvious and clear that India plays a key role when it comes to global climate change and tackling the consequences. The cooperation that we are engaging in this area is broad, and I look forward and I'm pleased that we've been able to sign a number of joint declarations of intent like the one that we have signed just a minute ago. This is about climate protection, which is ever so important. Look to the impact that the present heat wave in India has had on its population. That is an indication of the fact that climate change is having an impact and that we have to do what we can to stop it. It is a topic where we again need to cooperate closely. We need to coordinate on this and many other issues. And this is the purpose of our intergovernmental consultations. When it comes to implementing the projects and measures of this partnership of ours, we will make available funds in the future, all of them together equal 10 billion euros. Thus, it is good that the ministers have agreed on a number of cooperation agreements here. They've agreed on cooperating in areas such as agricultural ecology, development cooperation, forest restoration, but also on activities in the field of renewable energies, and the solar partnership between India and Germany has played a prominent part, as has our cooperation on green hydrogen. I'm especially delighted, Prime Minister, that your initiative to enhance our cooperation on green hydrogen has borne fruit today by us setting up, taking a major step with regard to setting up a task force on green hydrogen. Another success of our bilateral exchanges today is the agreement on a migration and mobility partnership which allows us to benefit from the enormous potential of migration and skilled labour to both our countries' interest and benefit. This goes to show that our relationship is not only broad and intensive, but it is also based on a deep sense of trust. Prime Minister, thank you very much for having come to Berlin today. Thank you for your personal commitment, which has made it possible to have a successful exchange of views today. And I look forward already now to the next intergovernmental consultation in 2 years' time in New Delhi.
Thank you. Chancellor Scholz, Friends, Guten Tag, नमस्कार। सबसे पहले मेरे और मेरे प्रतिनिधि मंडल के गर्मजोशी भरे स्वागत के लिए मैं चांसलर शोल्ज का हृदय से धन्यवाद करता हूं। मुझे खुशी है कि इस वर्ष की मेरी पहली विदेश यात्रा जर्मनी में हो रही है। इस वर्ष के शुरुआत में किसी विदेशी लीडर के साथ मेरी पहली टेलीफोन वार्ता भी मेरे मित्र चांसलर शोल्ज के साथ हुई थी। चांसलर शोल्ज के लिए भी आज की भारत जर्मनी आईजीसी इस वर्ष की किसी भी देश के साथ पहली आईजीसी है। ये कई फर्स्ट दर्शाते हैं कि भारत और जर्मनी दोनों ही देश इस महत्वपूर्ण पार्टनरशिप को कितनी प्राथमिकता दे रहे हैं। लोकतांत्रिक देशों के तौर पर भारत और जर्मनी कई कॉमन मूल्यों को साझा करते हैं। इन साझा मूल्यों और साझा हितों के आधार पर पिछले कुछ वर्षों में हमारी द्विपक्षीय संबंधों में उल्लेखनीय प्रगति हुई है। हमारी पिछली आईजीसी 2019 में हुई थी। तब से विश्व में महत्वपूर्ण परिवर्तन हुए हैं। कोविड-19 महामारी ने वैश्विक अर्थव्यवस्था पर विनाशकारी प्रभाव डाला है। हाल की जियोपॉलिटिकल घटनाओं ने भी दिखाया कि विश्व की शांति और स्थिरता कितनी नाजुक स्थिति में है और सभी देश कितने इंटरकनेक्टेड हैं। यूक्रेन के संकट के आरंभ से ही हमने तुरंत युद्ध विराम का आह्वान किया और इस बात पर जोर दिया था कि विवाद को सुलझाने के लिए बातचीत ही एकमात्र उपाय है। हमारा मानना है कि इस युद्ध में कोई विजयी पार्टी नहीं होगी, सभी को नुकसान होगा। इसलिए हम शांति के पक्ष में हैं। यूक्रेन संघर्ष से उत्पन्न उथल-पुथल के कारण तेल की कीमतें आसमान छू रही हैं। विश्व में खाद्यान्न और फर्टिलाइजर की भी कमी हो रही है। इससे विश्व के हर परिवार पर बोझ पड़ा है, किंतु विकासशील और गरीब देशों पर इसका असर और गंभीर होगा। इस संघर्ष के ह्यूमैनिटेरियन इम्पैक्ट से भारत बहुत ही चिंतित है। हमने अपनी तरफ से यूक्रेन को मानवीय सहायता भेजी है। हम अन्य मित्र देशों को भी अन्य निर्यात, तेल आपूर्ति और आर्थिक सहायता के माध्यम से मदद करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। आज छठी आईजीसी में से भारत जर्मनी भागीदारी को एक नई दिशा मिली है। इस आईजीसी ने एनर्जी और एनवायरनमेंट दोनों क्षेत्रों में हमारे सहयोग को महत्वपूर्ण गाइडेंस दिया है। मुझे विश्वास है कि आज किए गए निर्णयों का हमारे क्षेत्र और विश्व के भविष्य पर सकारात्मक प्रभाव पड़ेगा। आज हम इंडो जर्मनी पार्टनरशिप ऑन ग्रीन एंड सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट लॉन्च कर रहे हैं। भारत ने ग्लासगो में अपने क्लाइमेट एम्बिशन को बढ़ाकर विश्व को यह दर्शाया है कि हमारे लिए ग्रीन एंड सस्टेनेबल ग्रोथ एक आर्टिकल ऑफ फेथ है। इस नई पार्टनरशिप के तहत जर्मनी ने 2030 तक 10 बिलियन यूरो की अतिरिक्त विकास सहायता से भारत के ग्रीन ग्रोथ प्लान्स को सपोर्ट करने का निर्णय लिया है। इसके लिए मैं जर्मनी और चांसलर शोल्ज को धन्यवाद देता हूं। हमारे कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री स्ट्रेंथ को देखते हुए हमने एक ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन टास्क फोर्स भी बनाने का निर्णय लिया है। दोनों देशों में ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को बढ़ाने के लिए में यह बहुत उपयोगी रहेगा। भारत और जर्मनी दोनों को ही अन्य देशों में डेवलपमेंट कोऑपरेशन का लंबा अनुभव है। आज हमने अपने अनुभवों को जोड़कर त्रिपक्षीय कोऑपरेशन के जरिए तीसरे देशों में संयुक्त परियोजनाओं पर कार्य करने का भी निर्णय लिया है। हमारे यह सहयोग विकासशील विश्व के लिए पारदर्शी और सस्टेनेबल विकास परियोजनाओं का विकल्प प्रदान करेगा। फ्रेंड्स, पोस्ट कोविड काल में भारत अन्य बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्थाओं के मुकाबले सबसे तेज ग्रोथ देख रहा है। हमें विश्वास है कि भारत वैश्विक रिकवरी का महत्वपूर्ण स्तंभ बनेगा। हाल ही में हमने बहुत कम समय में यूएई तथा ऑस्ट्रेलिया के साथ व्यापार समझौतों पर हस्ताक्षर किए। ईयू के साथ भी हम एफटीए वार्ताओं में शीघ्र प्रगति के लिए प्रतिबद्ध हैं। भारत के कुशल कामगारों और प्रोफेशनल से कई देशों की अर्थव्यवस्थाओं को लाभ मिला है। मुझे विश्वास है कि भारत और जर्मनी के बीच हो रहे कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव माइग्रेशन एंड मोबिलिटी पार्टनरशिप एग्रीमेंट से दोनों देशों के बीच आवाजाही सुगम बनेगी। मैं फिर एक बार आज की समिट के लिए, आपके इनिशिएटिव के लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूं।
Pressing on the relationship shared between India and Germany and the potential that it carries, talking about the fallout of the Ukraine war and the impact that it has had across the world, saying and maintaining that India has and will only push for peace and that dialogue is the only way forward as far as the Ukraine war is concerned, stressing on how Germany is a key security partner, reiterating the cooperation in several sectors, specifically energy, and also talking about the Green Hydrogen Task Force, the setting up of which will result in green hydrogen infrastructure being established in both the countries. This is the first leg of the Prime Minister's visit to 3 European countries. He's also co-chairing that 6th India-Germany intergovernmental consultation in Berlin. Prime Minister Modi's visit, including 24 engagements across approximately 65 hours. He will be holding meetings, bilateral as well as multilateral, with world leaders from 7 countries as a part of this initiative, and besides interacting with around 50 global business leaders. And our correspondent Siddhant Sibul has been tracking those developments very closely. He is now joining us live on the broadcast. Siddhant, as the Indian Prime Minister reiterated and pointed towards the potential that the relationship between the two sides really carries, if you can take us through what you have been seeing around you vis-a-vis the interactions that have already taken place between the leaders, the business leaders and the Indian Prime Minister, and how this visit is a reiteration of the relationship, the dynamics of the relationship that will, of course, be taken forward in the next few months.
Well, yes, it was a packed day, and the just concluded press statements gives a new dynamism to the relationship in terms of the engagement which has happened today between the Indian Prime Minister and the new German Chancellor. But if you look at the key takeaways from that press statement, 2 key takeaways. First, of course, on the green partnership, the pact was signed, how Germany is going to help India in terms of green technology. In fact, the German Chancellor also mentioned about the heat wave in India. In terms of the other key outcome, it is clearly the Russia-Ukraine war, which was mentioned by both the German Chancellor and the Indian Prime Minister talking about that there will be no one victorious when it comes to wars, and called for peace. Also talked about what India is doing in terms of providing financial assistance to countries, talking about what the war is doing, impacting supply chains, and that, of course, is leading to high inflation globally, impacting many developing countries. If you look at what the German Chancellor had to say, he, of course, strongly slammed Russia, saying that this war needs to be ended as soon as possible. And this is something that was essentially expected as well. In fact, I'm just standing in front of the location now where the Indian Prime Minister is going to due to shortly arrive. And security, in fact, has been beefed up here ahead of the arrival. And then, of course, there will be two more important engagements. He is going to meet the business leadership, and then, of course, ending the day with the celebration, what we saw in the morning as well, but perhaps in a much more larger scale, the Indian diaspora welcoming the Indian Prime Minister, and, of course, the address which the Indian Prime Minister will be doing when it comes to the diaspora component. In fact, this visit so far has been dominated by the diaspora content in terms of the welcome, the rousing welcome, the jubilations we saw earlier today when Prime Minister arrived. Then, of course, the visuals in front of the Brandenburg Gate as well. So, largely a packed day, a visit, of course, that will help strengthen relationship between the two countries, between India and European Union's powerhouse that is Germany.
Siddharth, let's also talk about the emphasis that is being laid on the Renewable Energy Partnership and that Triangular Development Cooperation Pact that's also been inked. If you can summarize for our viewers what this initiative will really mean when it comes to also some respite vis-a-vis the fallout of the Ukraine war that's been witnessed across the world.
Well, largely these were pacts which were on expected lines, and if you look at one of the pacts that is on green partnership, that is something that we have seen increased engagement with members of the European Union. We know that India has a green partnership with Denmark. That's green strategic partnership, which is the first of its kind India has with any country. And this is coming at a time when we know that climate change has been a global concern. India, of course, announced its commitments last year at Glasgow, something that Indian Prime Minister also mentioned during his press statements. But yes, if we look at the larger context of the conversation and the press statements, it was how to deal with the fallout of the Russia-Ukraine war. There was a considerable mention by both sides on Russia-Ukraine war, while the Indian Prime Minister did not condemn the invasion. This is something on expected lines that has been India's policy. But we saw the German Chancellor condemning what has happened when it comes to Ukraine. In fact, the Indian Prime Minister has just arrived. I'll just show you the visuals of the Indian Prime Minister's cavalcade now arriving here. And in fact, members of the diaspora also present here to welcome the Indian Prime Minister. Now the Indian Prime Minister, you can see the visuals of the Indian Prime Minister's cavalcade arriving. Those are the visuals of Indian Prime Minister's cavalcade arriving, and that you see is the vehicle in which the Indian Prime Minister is present, and shortly he is going to enter the hotel, where of course we will see of course other engagements very soon. But you can see the diaspora very enthusiastic about the visit of the Indian Prime Minister, and we have been speaking with the members of the diaspora on this issue, that they have been very keen to speak about this entire visit. Let's try to speak with some members of the Indian diaspora. There you have it, the Indian Prime Minister now arriving in the hotel where he is, of course, staying. That let's speak to some of the members of the Indian diaspora. How do you feel about the Indian Prime Minister's visit here in Berlin? You were earlier in the day also celebrating his arrival.
Yes, we are really glad that we got a chance to perform here for Modi ji, and it's really pride moment for all of us to represent Indian culture and to represent Indian community. Thank you.
A very proud moment for the Indian diaspora. Ma'am, would you like to talk about how do you see this visit as?
Yeah, of course. Actually, we are glad we are performing for Mr. Narendra Modi in this event, and we are proud. We are in Berlin and we are representing for the Maharashtra state and of course for India as well.
So what have you planned for the Indian Prime Minister later today when the diaspora events happen?
Okay, in the evening you are saying. Yeah. So yeah, everybody is performing over there with the Launi, then Lejim, then Dhol, everything.
Ma'am, would you like to talk about how do you see this visit helping strengthen the relationship between India and Germany?
Of course, it will strengthen the relationship between India and Germany. And Modi ji is our leader, and whatever he's doing for India is really great. So definitely it will strengthen the ties between.
So clearly the diaspora very enthusiastic about the visit of the Indian Prime Minister, and you saw the Prime Minister just arriving at his hotel where of course we know that there are other engagements due as well. One of the key engagements being the meeting with the business leader, but by and large packed day, a hectic day, but of course a day which will see a lot of outcomes that will help strengthen the relationship between the two countries.
Right. If you can just elaborate for us what the next few hours will be looking like for the Indian Prime Minister, Siddhant, the engagements that are lined up for now?
Well, the major two engagements that are expected to happen is, of course, the meeting with the business leaders, and the second major event will be the diaspora component, where he addresses the diaspora here in Berlin. Quite a moment, essentially, when it comes to the diaspora, because if you look at the average age of the Indian diaspora in Berlin, it's around 25 to 28. These are students who want to grow with the country, essentially becoming part of the German society. So essentially what we saw in the United States in 1970s, the Indian students becoming part of the American society, then rising up the ladder, becoming part of the political landscape. We will see that happening as well in Germany in few years' time as well, given that how keen they are to be part of the German society. In fact, we managed to speak to a German politician who is of Indian origin. He is he's member of the council of Hanover city, and he is first of such person of Indian origin to be part of the council. So clearly we will see such more names coming in the future. But by and large, these two events are the two key events. Then of course the Prime Minister tomorrow leaves for Copenhagen, where there are other engagements, meeting with 5 leaders of the Northern European countries, the Nordic countries, and then of course France, where he meets Emmanuel Macron, with whom he shares very close camaraderie in terms of engagement. We know the Prime Minister was in France in 2019 for the G7 summit, where the French President had invited. In fact, today G7 was again in news. Something that WION broke first was that the German side has invited India for the G7 summit that will take place next month. So a lot of more high-level visits from India to Germany in next few months. We've already seen the External Affairs Minister was in the country earlier this year for the Munich Security Conference. Now Prime Minister himself is present. We do expect a more high-level visit. It is not decided as of now at what level Indian representation will be there at the G7 summit that will take place under the German presidency. But usually at G7 meetings, it is represented at the Prime Minister's level. So will there be another visit by the Indian Prime Minister to Germany in matter of 1 month is something that is still to be talked about. There could be a confirmation very soon.
Right, let's leave it there for the moment. Siddhant, thanks very much for bringing us those updates. Around 24 engagements lined up over 65 hours, a jam-packed schedule to say the least. And our correspondent Siddhant Sibul has been getting us those minute-by-minute updates.